Nick Green is arguably the face of up-and-coming commentary creators on YouTube, and on the surface that would seem amazing. He promotes values such as inclusivity and equality, which is refreshing given the rise of so-called alpha male creators. The problem is, Nick has become a wildly unethical creator who uses his overall great values to dismiss any criticism as being bigoted, and his recklessness has included blatantly lying whenever convenient, and even throwing an alleged victim of SA, his friend no less, under the bus to excuse his weaponizing someone taking their own life. And yes, this goes beyond his recent controversies with SuperMega. To put it simply, if Nick Green represents the future of commentary, then I think we're in for a bad time. Which sounds extreme, but hear me out. I've noticed that most commentary tends to fall under one of two categories. The first is what I would call critical commentary, which just means that the primary goal of the content is to inform the viewer of something while presenting an argument they hopefully agree with. However, because of the creator's best attempts to prioritize truth, the viewer can find themselves fully informed of a situation, disagree with the creator, but ultimately understand how they arrived at that conclusion. This is the commentary I try to do, though I wouldn't claim to be perfect at it. On the other hand, you have feel-good commentary, where the primary goal is either to be entertaining or to find viewers who already agree with you and tell them what they want to hear. Ultimately, you're not trying to persuade anyone who currently disagrees with you and will likely dismiss them as being a bad person. I would argue that Nick falls under this category. But to be clear, feel-good commentary isn't inherently bad. A lot of the work of people I really respect, like Drew Gooden or Cody Ko, fall under this category. But when producing these videos, it was mostly on things that were either very cut and dry, like Logan Paul's Japan incident, or were straight up opinion pieces that were primarily trying to be entertaining or unserious. They weren't pretending to provide thorough coverage of a confusing situation or send a mob after anyone. That's the big difference from Nick, who creates such levels of backlash by providing very surface level and misleading coverage while making life-ruining accusations. And honestly, Nick's style feels like this weird attempt to emulate the laid-back tone of the creators he's looked up to without realizing it doesn't work when tackling certain topics or when punching down. And while Nick has recently focused on making surface-level drama videos, several of his recent attempts at traditional commentary have been Nick trying to chase someone off of the internet because they come into conflict with a friend of his. And during his coverage of such events, he has a very subtle but incredibly misleading way of turning a he said she said situation with much nuance into one where his friend is unquestionably the victim and the other party is a villain who needs to be dealt with. Let me explain. In doing commentary, you're going to come across facts, opinions, speculation, and hearsay, which is the unproven word of someone. And using all of that in your commentary is totally fine. It's all fair game. But where Nick's problem lies is the fact that he will state all of these things as fact. In other words, if something contributes to his narrative, it 100% happened, and if something hurts it, it is false and outright ridiculous. For example, listen to how Nick is about to take a minor fact and add a touch of vague hearsay to launch into baseless speculation that somehow acts as evidence for an incredibly serious accusation.
It's hard for me to completely understand where they're coming from when they say they weren't trying to cover up a sexual assault, especially because two close friends of theirs, Justin and Kelly, both removed SuperMega from their Twitter bios, and according to Lex, it was after they found out about Don's situation. And it really did seem like they were two of the people that were closer to Matt and Ryan, so to know that they were willing to immediately disconnect and separate themselves from SuperMega says a lot about Matt and Ryan's character. It says a whole lot of stuff about them.
And Nick's banger evidence has since been completely debunked, as the two employees in question, among others, have since spoken out both in support of the aforementioned Matt and Ryan and against Nick. And this may seem like a pretty minor criticism, because let's face it, everyone sometimes does it without realizing, including me. And every time someone does it, it typically has a very small effect that is honestly negligible. But when you do it 20, 30, 50 times in a row, that's how you take a situation with a lot of shades of gray and turn it into an incredibly black and white one. Because that's how I think Nick sees the world, in a very myopic way where he is the hero and anyone he stands against is a villain. Furthermore, Nick will often use his friendship with someone to establish himself as an authority on a topic who knows better than anyone else covering it, but will gloss over the fact that every word out of his mouth is hearsay.
Gus points out that there are many people talking about the situation who say they know Gus or and he specifies that all of these people have been people who he doesn't even know or who do not have any actual insight into their lives. Well, I don't know if you can say that about me. I felt the need to address this interview so more people could hear from someone who has real life insight in this situation and knows more than the actual public does.
Now that's a lot of confidence, considering Nick goes on to exclusively cover this situation by stating hearsay from his friend as fact concerning events he did not witness. He doesn't actually witness anything for himself, yet is stating facts as if he did while presenting himself as an insider.
She can confirm that her behavior and the response to Gus in this story is completely false. She did not scream at Gus, and she did not slam the door as she left his house, as she couldn't because her hands were full with her belongings and her dog. Everyone who is friends with and knows that she doesn't respond to situations like this with open and aggressive behavior.
And while I'm going to get into what I call Nick's pattern of being a pathological liar, a phony that uses feminism for his own gain, and an outright bully teaming with arrogance, it's easiest to prove when Nick has outright lied to millions, so we'll start there. The two biggest examples of Nick straight up lying can be found in his coverage of the controversies involving SuperMega and Gus Johnson. And while I've previously covered both of these situations, links below, I want to talk about his lies in more specific detail. Because Nick will insist that anyone who criticizes his involvement in these situations, or even has the nerve to disagree with him, fall under the category of being bigoted freaks, Reddit debate bros, or are otherwise negligible, where their opinion does not count.
There's too many Reddit debate bro dorks on this website trying to come after me every single day. So much of the criticism I've received from making these videos has been from people who never took the time to watch any of the videos I made about the situation, and it becomes increasingly more obvious that they took the word of people deflecting from the truth rather than actually watching all of the videos involved. That is the definition of attacking someone in bad faith.
And you're going to notice that this attitude towards his critics is very consistent, where Nick truly believes it is impossible for someone to criticize or disagree with him without being either misinformed or acting in bad faith. But first, Nick repeatedly lied about his involvement with the SuperMega situation for months. To make a long story short, Nick's friend Lex shared her experience being assaulted by an employee of SuperMega composed of Matt and Ryan, and Nick decided to make 2 videos on the topic to support his friend. Lex and Nick repeatedly accused the duo of covering up her assault because they didn't make a public statement about it.
They've pretty much covered up my assault.
All she wanted from SuperMega was for them to make a post about why they were letting Don go after so much time, so other people don't become victims of him, but Matt and Ryan never did that.
Despite Lex asking SuperMega to not publicize it.
I purposely told both of them, I don't want this in a text. I don't want this screenshotable. I don't want this to be a big thing.
We never stated our reasoning for cutting contact with Don or removing him as the channel artist. Because Lex, she expressed that she did not want this to be a thing that was public.
Lex and Nick then used the vast majority of their videos to expose very personal and unrelated parts of Matt and Ryan's lives and mindlessly spread rumors that have since been debunked or proven false.
So not only did he cheat on his girlfriend and broke up with her, and then she found out after because Jim was living with the new girl. Well, she's still friends with Jim.
And not only did that, but cheated on the girl that he cheated on his girlfriend with a worker by the name of Morgpie. Matt made sure to clarify that since Don was a contracted employee, that they didn't actually have to fire him for the sexual assault. I mean, you say it yourself that SuperMega is your magnum opus. It is a part of you. Your personal life is a part of this channel.
Lex and Nick also went on to weaponize the suicide of Matt and Ryan's close friend by using the duo's grieving process to attack them.
Daniel was the 3rd member of this YouTube channel, and he ended up taking his life a number of years ago. And despite the fact that this seemed to be a big turning point in Matt and Ryan's career, and it seems to be something that affected them even to this day, Lex and, as we'll learn in the future, other former employees of SuperMega have claimed that Matt had made a lot of jokes about what happened to Daniel, and even called him a coward at some point for what he did.
So no, they don't care about suicide. They don't give a shit about suicide. They only give a shit about themselves.
Mind you, Ryan was the one to discover the friend after their successful attempt.
I found Daniel unresponsive in his room. The person making these claims never knew Daniel. they definitely were not a part of the group that experienced the trauma of losing him.
Now, Nick's coverage of the situation has been criticized for weaponizing such a tragedy while engaging in what has been called hit piece behavior. Nick initially dismissed the criticism with the claim that because he was personally invested, he couldn't be expected to prioritize truth when broadcasting to over 1 million people.
Of course, I'm gonna take the side of a personal friend of mine when she comes out with a story about her own sexual assault. This isn't like an online, like normal thing where I look at all the facts and I make a decision. No.
Now, where does this turn into Nick lying? Well, in his initial coverage, Nick says that his reason for talking about the situation was as follows.
All I really want out of this video and out of this situation is for the victims in the story to be heard and to have a voice. I'm going to talk about the controversies that come forward, and the reason I want to do that is because they're not shutting it down this time.
In fact, he later specifies that he got permission to make videos talking about the situation from Lex.
And when Lex was preparing her story, I was given permission by her to cover it. It was never something that I suggested to Lex, but when she mentioned it, I decided to share her story.
Listen to that wording. She told him about the situation, so he decided to share her story and got permission. So he's not part of any coordinated effort, right? In fact, when Matt suggested that Nick was possibly put up to this by a disgruntled ex-employee,
A lot of people, mainly Leighton and his close friends, have used this as an opportunity to capitalize off of what was initially someone's story of sexual assault.
Nick responded with outrage at the idea that he was part of an organized effort or that he makes videos for vendettas.
Does Matt think that that's all it takes to get me to make a video about something? I know it's easy to just throw up when your channel's not doing great and you only really want to post American Truck Simulator Let's Plays, but I have a real job with a real schedule that I keep up for my audience, and I don't make videos for personal vendettas.
Now, after 3 months of Nick repeatedly doubling down in response to slowly growing backlash, Nick released a third and fourth video. Listen to what he says.
Lex posted her story, and I was asked by her and Ethan to potentially talk about it on my channel because I've talked about similar situations in the past, and I should not have agreed to cover it when Ethan and Lex approached me with the idea.
So let's review. Nick was asked by his close friends to use his platform to help with a personal grudge, did not disclose that, lied about it, and insulted Matt for insinuating he was part of an organized effort. Like, Nick tried to use Matt's brief mention of him to fully discredit almost a full hour of Matt presenting evidence of his innocence.
But I think that this claim that he kind of ends his response with is extremely in bad faith, and it makes me question his true intentions with all of the claims he's making.
And after all of that outrage, Nick was part of exactly that, a coordinated effort organized by his friend. It was just orchestrated by Lex instead of Leighton. And another party that received backlash for spreading false accusations has since come out and shared that they felt like they were pressured into making their video, strongly insinuating that that was by Lex.
I was surrounded by people who were telling me to, like, come out and basically dogpile. And I did it. Yeah, I joined the dogpile. Very clearly used you for the narrative to an extent. It's becoming more and more obvious. Yeah, that is kind of what seemed like happened. Have you talked with Lex since? Nope. And that kind of says something to me.
Which would make this the definition of a coordinated effort. So Nick lied to over 1 million people because he knew the truth would make his friend look bad. And he only came clean as a last resort to protect and distance himself. And literally 2 minutes after admitting this, Nick still tries to lie and say there was no coordinated effort and dismisses the idea as conspiracy.
I was asked by her and Ethan to potentially talk about it on my channel, and a few days later, I posted a video covering everything she said in the video. Since then, there has been a narrative pushed by fans of SuperMega, other YouTubers, and SuperMega themselves that has fully embraced the conspiracy that there was an organized attempt to cancel SuperMega and that I am one of the main people behind this attack.
And Nick's entire defense of him and Lex hinges on the idea that Lex decided to post her video by herself and that there was no preconceived plan. But tweets resurfaced from months before Lex's video where Lex's boyfriend and Nick say that they are planning something behind the scenes and are gathering other people's stories, which would make this the very definition of a coordinated effort, one that Nick knew about months in advance. And while I'm going to get into the lies Nick likes to sprinkle throughout his content, I cannot stress enough as a commentary creator with a fraction of what he has, how insane it is to make a hit piece because your friend asked you to, act offended when accused of that, and only come clean to protect yourself. Like, I cannot fathom lying to my audience like that. But I accuse Nick of sprinkling lies throughout his content. Why? Well, like I said, he states whatever he wants to as fact, even if it's something that's provably false or has been debunked. Now that seems pretty careless, so why would Nick do this? Honestly, I think it's because he sees his viewers as dumb. If they watch his videos, Nick seems to assume that 99% of them will not check any other coverage of that situation. Or if they do engage with other content, they will likely do so with an extreme bias because Nick has already told his viewers that the opinions of anyone disagreeing with him don't count. Also, notice how I just made it very clear when I was speculating? If this was a Nick Green video, all of that would have been stated as facts, but spreading lies. If you remember, Nick's accusation that Matt and Ryan covered up an assault was quickly debunked. Yet 3 months later, in his so-called apology, Nick repeated the accusation and even made the claim that the duo admitted to it.
I have seen creators who are now backing up SuperMega as if they both didn't fully admit to covering up their friend and employee assaulting another one of their friends.
Which is a lie. SuperMega explicitly denied this claim.
I also want to state that we never took any action to cover up assault, and we never tried to cover Dawn from any consequences. For example, I was the one who told Ross over the phone because Ross had a show with Dawn and I felt like he needed to know this.
And after some tiptoeing, we ended up cutting ties with Dawn, both personally and professionally. We cut all contact with him. We also updated those who we knew that were working with him of the situation.
And it is wild to me that Nick is so confident lying about something that is this well documented. And here's the thing, when Nick goes on to quintuple down that they covered up an assault, he doesn't acknowledge a single argument that debunks this. He just restates his past reasoning that ultimately boils down to, if a victim asks you not to go public with their assault, you should assume it's obvious what's best for them and publicize it anyway without asking. Yeah, I'm serious.
Matt's answer to that would be that they didn't tell other people or the public about this because Lex wanted the situation to be private and they didn't want to speak for her. And Matt agrees that he should not have asked Lex what he should do in this scenario. It was very obvious what he should have done, and he decided to be passive about it. And yes, this is what caused a lot of the issues. And I still do not understand how all of that stayed between 3 people. I struggle to understand how someone as close to them like Justin wouldn't know, especially because Justin knew Dawn. I'm all for keeping Lex's story private if she wants it to be private, but there's gotta be a way to tell your fans in a safe way that Dawn is not someone who they should follow anymore, that he was let go for a reason. All she wanted from SuperMega was for them to make a post about why they were letting Dawn go after so much time, so other people don't become victims of him.
And unsurprisingly, given how that makes no sense, Nick has never been able to provide a suggestion as to what Matt and Ryan should have done. And personally, if I was constantly repeating a claim that has been debunked, I would probably acknowledge like, hey, I know a lot of you disagree with me coming to this conclusion because of XYZ, but I'm still making this claim because of ABC, or I'm able to disprove XYZ. But instead, Nick seems to rely on the assumption that his viewers have not seen his talking points debunked, so he can continue hiding behind virtuous buzzwords to mischaracterize his critics. Nick also says this:
it has been very clear that they are not above denouncing the hate that Lex is receiving because of things they said in their videos. Matt and Ryan will not stop anyone from claiming that everything that happened in Lex's story was a lie.
Another easily disproven lie. Both Matt and Ryan have explicitly disavowed any attacks on Lex and have stated that they believe her.
From the beginning, when she told me, I fully believed and have supported Lex. I am in no way saying that her coming forward with the Dawn situation is a ploy by Leighton to get us canceled. Do not harass anyone that was mentioned in this video. I'm not sending any harassment.
I took these allegations seriously and expressed my support for Lex. Could have been handled so much better and should have been handled so much better, especially since Lex was the one who trusted us with her story and her trauma.
And Nick even says that Matt and Ryan are bad people for not coming to his defense.
Matt and Ryan are well aware of how their audience is responding to this. They see how dishonest honest the claims are about Lex, myself, and many others. But it has become very obvious that they do not care how their audience is responding to this.
Imagine getting 1 million views by smearing someone's name with false rumors, weaponizing an unimaginably traumatic tragedy, doxing Matt's girlfriend, gloating about all of this, and criticizing your victims for not defending you. And this is one of many examples of just how out of touch with reality Nick is, not to mention entitled. But this behavior isn't new for Nick. He deployed the same tactics against Gus Johnson around a year ago, down to the easily proven lies. Now, I'm not going to go into the minutiae of the situation for a 4th time, because honestly I don't want to, and it's not relevant to my point here. Deja vu for some of you, I know. But 2 years ago, Gus's ex-girlfriend spread accusations towards him in a very messy and misleading way concerning events that had taken place 3 years prior. This led to Gus losing over 400,000 subscribers and counting. For 6 months, Gus exclusively made apologetic statements where he chose not to provide his perspective on the events, which the other party responded to by escalating the situation in ways that were cryptic and arguably quite manipulative. And the ex-girlfriend eventually had to acknowledge and admit to one instance of spreading lies for her benefit. Eventually, Gus partook in an impromptu interview where he for the first time gave his perspective on the events. And while his tone was very apologetic, Gus provided revelations that painted a very different picture of his ex's intentions, such as her asking to get back together just 3 weeks before she launched the campaign to ruin him.
She surprised me because she came back in and she had brought me some gifts and said that she wanted to get back together with me, that she was sorry that it didn't work out and she didn't want to give up, and she said she wanted to come back into my life. And I just looked at all the effort that we had put in the last year, and I just thought that we had really given it as much of a try as we possibly could, and I just said, I'm sorry, like I'm not there right now. I don't think it's a good idea.
As well as her allegedly screaming at and threatening to blackmail him in response to his rejection.
And she screamed at me and said, you know, you put out whatever you want, but don't say it was mutual. That's a lie. And she slammed the door and left my house.
Now, why does this matter? Well, the interview caused the girlfriend to receive backlash after 6 months of public support, and she happens to be friends with Nick. See where this is going? Once again, Nick got 1 million views by inserting himself into the situation with a video where he stands up for his friend, and lies countless times in the process of doing so. And while I've already talked about Nick's sloppy coverage, link below, I want to focus on Nick lying and being deceptive about things that are easily disproven. Here's an example of what I mean.
Through all of this, has not gained subscribers, so it wouldn't make sense for her to lie and bash Gus just to hurt his career.
Okay, so she didn't benefit from the situation, which proves she had good intentions, right? Nick even specifies that she didn't gain subscribers. But of the last 2 years, her video on Gus marks the peak of her engagement in terms of both subscribers and views, and it's not even close. Also, the original video is her 2nd biggest ever with over 1 million views. Not to mention, it features ads as well as a sponsorship. So doing some math as a creator, she made up to $10,000 from this video, possibly even more. But that's the thing. While I don't have a problem with anything I just said, many agreed that this reflected poorly on Gus's ex. So rather than say, while she did gain XYZ, I do believe her when she says that wasn't her motivation as it wouldn't be worth the negatives, Nick doesn't do that. He just says that it didn't happen despite it being very easy to prove he's lying. He acts like he's able to decide what is and isn't reality. And I think it's because Nick knows that most of his audience will not fact check him, so he wanted to get ahead of Gus's interview making the rounds, which is the exact same thing he did with SuperMega, where he rushed out his video before they could defend themselves.
Another claim that is being made about me is that I made my initial video without looking at the evidence or letting SuperMega speak about their side on the issue. If you know my channel, especially at that time, I was posting constantly and I was always trying to be the quickest one to get to a story. I do think I should have waited until Matt and Ryan responded to everything before talking about it. In hindsight, that is a big mistake that I will not be making in the future. I definitely need to take a look at my content and look at the way that I can impact other people as a result of telling my stories.
Now, Nick also likes to lie by omission, leaving out information that reflects poorly on him or his friends. See, at one point, Gus says this.
When one person right after a breakup really just smears you like this.
Now, this was in reference to Gus's ex encouraging speculation with vague and inflammatory posts while liking dozens of tweets that change and contradict her original story, as well as posting a tweet the day Gus canceled his tour that seemed to gloat about it being canceled. Now, Nick responds to this with the following.
Besides the fact that doesn't use Gus's name throughout her original video, and her relationship with him was only a small but necessary part of the video.
Which, yeah, is 100% true. She did not use Gus's name in her original video. However, Nick conveniently leaves out that Gus's ex publicly confirmed she was talking about him within 6 hours on both Twitter and YouTube, not to mention the dozens of tweets she liked that referred to him by name. Now, that's not a great look when you're accused of launching a smear campaign. So Nick just decides that Gus's ex only liked tweets that echoed her original video, but somehow at the same time, it's okay that she endorsed false accusations and harassment.
Gus does get upset that liked tweets that made him look bad, but they all echoed ideas that she already confirmed in her video. These weren't news statements that she was co-signing, but support that she was receiving for a story that was hard for her to tell. Gus also never specifically states what liked or retweeted and how it made him look bad. It was just another vague shot that he took at her to make her seem emotional and illogical. He also makes the bizarre claim that created memes. I don't know exactly what he's talking about here because again, he doesn't specify, but I assume that he is talking about the one picture of a Pokemon card that put on her story. For someone who works professionally in comedy, I don't know what his idea of a meme is.
For the record, much of the public, including myself, only learned that she was talking about Gus because of a notification on the Twitter homepage. One that showed her either liking a thread that proved it was him or one of the dozens of tweets attacking him by name, as well as her confirming it within the comments of her video. Not to mention that people used the tweets she liked as confirmation of various false accusations. And this exact behavior is a large part of why there are so many misconceptions concerning Gus to this day, all about events that now happened 5 years ago. Oh, but all of that makes his friend look bad, so Nick just leaves it out or decides it doesn't count. Sounds familiar, right? He also has a habit of stating people's intentions as fact, as if he can read minds. Again, carrying himself as if he has insider knowledge, despite that being simply false. In fact, this habit was the basis of Nick repeatedly accusing SuperMega of covering up an assault to over 1 million people. But as it relates to Gus, when responding to Gus's ex seemingly gloating about him having to cancel his tour, Nick says this.
Not only does this and so many of Gus's complaints boil down to, oh man, she was being so mean to me, but the tweet had nothing to do with the tour.
Just states it as fact. Like, it's not a hell of a coincidence that someone with a proven vendetta tweeted, "That's showbiz," right after Gus announced that he was canceling his tour. And to give you an idea of how full of it Nick really is, he goes from lambasting Gus for assuming that tweet was about him to quite literally in his very next sentence heavily insinuating that a random sketch from Gus is a shot at his ex.
And it's ridiculous to monitor what she's doing and assume that everything is about you, even if it is extremely vague. After Gus took a break from YouTube, his first video back was a sketch about a kid who was being overly dramatic about a medical condition and needed an ice pack. It came off as extremely tone deaf and as if it was a direct shot at
And because his unbiased coverage is little more than fan fiction, Nick will often contradict himself. For example, Nick repeatedly states that when someone comes forth with accusations, they're often attacked and chased off the internet.
And everyone knows how these YouTube cancellations end. The canceled creator remains financially comfortable while the victim is bullied by the creator's remaining fans until they leave the internet.
No objection so far. But whenever Gus doesn't describe something in vivid enough detail for him, Nick just decides that it's because he's trying to cover something up.
But when he has the opportunity to be open and honest about what he did, he refuses to be specific because he knows he can't get away with the horrific things he said or did.
When it's just as likely that Gus was being vague because of the very issues Nick described. But it's more convenient if his friend is perfect and Gus is evil, so Nick will state anything supporting that narrative as fact, just like with SuperMega. Now, between this and the SuperMega situation, notice how Nick's language very subtly rewrites events that he wasn't even present for. And most of these lies aren't even necessary, mind you. They don't change much on their own. But Nick does this non-stop in order to slowly transform a situation from there is very little certainty of what happened to this person is a straight up villain and we need to chase them off the internet. And his coverage of both situations received over 1 million views before Nick quietly deleted them. Really picture the damage that Nick has done with his deception twice. And Nick's defense is always that it's obvious he's going to believe his friend, fully ignoring the fact that there is a difference between being a good friend behind closed doors stores and making a public spectacle by presenting hearsay as fact. Because I don't think he sees having a platform as a responsibility and a privilege, but a game he's entitled to play. And look, I don't really care if truth is the reason that these creators face whatever consequences or you just don't like them. But in both instances, false accusations were able to spread as a direct result of Nick lying. But okay, I think I made it clear enough that Nick lies. But I also said I thought he was a phony who uses feminism for his own gain. And that's a huge leap. So surely I have something to back up a claim like that, right? Come on, you already know I'm gonna over-explain it. When Nick talks about what his female friends deal with in response to coming out with troubling stories, he goes out of his way to constantly emphasize that when someone comes forth about an accusation of abuse, generally a woman, they are treated harshly by the internet. In fact, Nick makes it a point to present himself as an ally to women.
He is absolutely preying on women. When I did the video about him in the podcast, the whole thing was like he was being misogynistic and weird about women, and things will be blown up to a big extent by small groups on the internet, specifically a lot of men who want to use this and weaponize this against women who try to be in power positions or do what Lizzo preaches to do. Now, I don't think I have to explain why this is disgusting. Sneeko is harassing a female content creator, telling her that the reason why she's so upset is because she hasn't had sex in a while. Andrew Tate continuously shows how fundamentally little he thinks of women and how gullible they are to fall for lies and tricks. Not only does Tate actively reinforce harmful patriarchal stereotypes about femininity and womanhood, he's such an incel. He's such an incel. They end up going down some pipeline and they end up being some radical freak who was never given love, so now they're an incel who wants to, you know, destroy women and have people harass them on the street.
Now, here's the thing. I agree with him. I try not to be performative, but I do call out misogyny when it comes up in a video, and when I do criticize a woman, I will often take a moment to disavow sexism. So what's the problem? Well, Nick will go out of his way to tell anyone that'll listen about how he is a proud ally to women and is willing to face the internet's cruelty head on to protect them.
I am absolutely not a stranger to hate campaigns like this. I have dealt with months of hate following my coverage on stories like Sneeko or Gus Johnson, both situations where I was harassed endlessly for uplifting the voices of victims who are attacked just like this.
Except that all goes out the window the second he starts losing subscribers. What do I mean? Recently, Ryan from SuperMega released a statement concerning how his friend's passing was used in poor taste as a weapon against him. Once again, Ryan was the one to discover the friend after their successful attempt. It doesn't get much worse than that. So Lex and Nick exposing Matt and Ryan for joking about the situation, which is a very common coping mechanism in response to genuine trauma, was unquestionably cruel. Hell, Lex went so far as to say that they did not care about the issue at all.
So no, they don't care about suicide. They don't give a shit about suicide. They only give a shit about themselves and who they can make jokes of that are under them that they can get away with. Never, you know, the person who got assaulted or the person who's like dealing with suicide attempts. I don't know. I know you guys don't give a shit about either of those things, obviously.
And constantly referred to their friend by name when said friend had left behind a family. Now, while Ryan does express pain at how his friend was dragged into this, he takes a very level-headed tone when outrage would be understandable. And he directly asks Nick and Lex to just take accountability and apologize for using unrelated trauma as a gotcha. And while this did increase the backlash that Nick and Lex were facing substantially, Ryan also gave them a very easy out, which he didn't have to do. Apologize for this one thing. And since Nick is the first to promote accountability and apologizing,
I think it's time for some people to be held accountable, and I think it's time for people to take some real action on creators who continually take advantage of the people around them and the people they hire. I'm like, where did you apologize? Man, it just gets better. I love this kind of apology. This apology is a little bizarre, and it seems a little bit suspicious. I don't know, to actually have her held accountable for her actions, and I think that's great.
She just came up like,
sorry, I was racist.
The video of her apologizing about it, looking back, comes off a little bit like blame me in certain ways.
This is gonna be when Nick really shines, right? Yeah, you already know the answer is no. Nick immediately took to his Instagram and posted a vague story, once again insinuating that anyone criticizing him is an SA apologist, which is in line with what we've seen. He seems to assume his audience is dumb, so he misrepresents his controversies to be seen as a martyr. When that finally stopped working and Nick finally started to lose subscribers, he made his third video on SuperMega. And while it's disguised as an apology, Nick can't help but assume a very snarky and defensive tone throughout, which you'll see. And he goes on to repeatedly throw Lex under the bus and distance himself from her, saying that he only covered Ryan's friend because Lex talked about it and he's just reporting as an outsider, meaning she should be blamed for any harm he chose to do with his platform.
Daniel should not have been mentioned in anyone's videos about the situation, including Lex. Because it was a part of multiple stories that I was summarizing in my video, I of course decided to include it as valuable information, but the purpose of my video on SuperMega was to highlight the stories that were told, not give my own personal story on the situation. Bringing up Daniel was purely part of reporting that story. In my video, I directly quoted what was being said in a story I was covering, and I believe that it was necessary to point out that these claims have been made, and of course I wanted to follow that up with what SuperMega thought about those claims. After reporting on this story in both of my videos, I will say that I believe Daniel's suicide should not have been a part of the story told by Lex and Layden. I do not think it was necessary information for anyone to include that in their personal story about SuperMega. I do not believe that means that I should ignore and disregard any mention of Daniel in my story, so I included it. Although I knew people personally involved in the story, I was still a third party who made this video summarizing Lex's story after it was posted, and I can firmly say that I had no part or decision in Daniel becoming a part of Lex or Layden's story. But again, our social media accounts are not controlled the same way. I am not in consistent communication with her, and I am not associated with how she goes about telling her story.
And during his fourth and final statement, Nick goes even further to wash his hands of this and straight up admits that he's only interested in protecting himself.
Whatever happens with this situation moving forward, I am not a part of it. I do not associate myself with anyone involved, and by no means does that mean that I'm fully discrediting Lex's story. By no means does that mean I'm fully siding with SuperMega. I'm truly trying to do what is right for my platform. I don't want my career to be defined by situations like this, and this is not at all the kind of content I want to create. This is not the kind of situation that I ever want to even be a part of in the future.
So let's review. Nick made multiple hit pieces because his close friends asked him to. He chose to insert himself into the situation, calling for accountability. And since he's been gloating about the situation while showboating about how cruel the internet can be to women and victims. So as soon as the controversy catches up to him, literally as soon as he starts losing subscribers, Nick immediately resorts to, oh my god, blame her, the victim of assault, she's the reason I did it, it's all her fault. Really? So he stands by his friends and takes on larger creators when they're already down, but immediately throws said friends under the bus once it causes a problem for him. When he could have just said, look, I really should have thought that through more, I didn't have a bad intention, but I could see how I was being a little careless, and for that I am sorry. A very easy apology that allows you to claim good intention without abandoning your friend. Also, now that I think about it, it's kind of insane that Nick made all of this way bigger, like he's a much larger creator than Lex, yet now that this is way worse for her than her original video, Nick just leaves her, just abandons her. Also, Nick says he was not given permission by Lex to make this video. In fact, he specifically is going against her wishes.
I was not given permission to make this video. Originally, I just wanted to do the best to respect the wishes of the victim in this situation and be quiet about it to try to lessen the amount of harassment happening, because I knew that talking about it would just result in more harassment against Lex.
In other words, the second Nick starts losing subscribers, it's every man for himself. Oh wow, Nick, you're really standing by your friend as she relives the trauma of her assault. What happened? I thought getting canceled was no big deal and creators remain unaffected.
But you can't ever name a single creator out there that cancel culture actually affects, when everyone knows how these YouTube cancellations end. The canceled creator remains financially comfortable while the victim is bullied by the creator's remaining fans until they leave the internet.
If that's the case, what are you freaking out about? And if all of that wasn't bad enough, Nick can't help but respond to Ryan's very restrained statement by baselessly accusing him of not watching Nick's videos.
Making claims that I used Ryan as a main point in my video or that I exploited his suicide for views on the SuperMega story makes it very obvious that Ryan really never watched anything that I made on the situation. If he did, he would see that all mentions of Daniel in my video were quoted from himself, Matt, Lex, or Layden.
And ironically, Nick doesn't seem to have fully read Ryan's statement, because Ryan described Nick's coverage in great detail with time codes and never makes the allegations that Nick dismisses, such as making Daniel a key part of his coverage. Other people may have said that, but Ryan didn't. Oh look, someone criticizes Nick, so he finds a reason to say that that criticism doesn't count. Haven't seen that before. Not like Nick goes on to do it again in the same video.
So much of the criticism I have received from making these videos has been from people who never took the time to watch any of the videos I made about the situation, and it becomes increasingly more obvious that they took the word of people deflecting from the truth rather than actually watching all of the videos involved. You cannot watch a video from another creator, or even from Matt and Ryan claiming that I am a liar, without even watching the content that I made in the first place. That is the definition of attacking someone in bad faith.
And what's even more fake is that this so-called apology came as soon as Nick started losing subscribers, after months of successfully burying this from his viewers. Now, this video was received horribly, so Nick released a fourth video where he seems to do a full 180 and finally owns up and admits he can't handle these kinds of situations and acknowledges that the criticisms of him were valid.
I inappropriately handled reporting on a story that I should not have reported on. I'm realizing pretty late that I was too close to the story, and regardless on my personal feelings for the situation, it was irresponsible for me to involve myself and my platform into a conflict that really had nothing to do with me. I am not free from the criticism of how I actually am making and reporting on those videos. I should not be involved or be a part of the story, and I should not have agreed to cover it when Ethan and Lex approached me with the idea.
I mean, it's a little weird that Nick owning up was buried in a completely unrelated video and he quietly deleted his so-called apology. But who cares? No one's perfect, and Nick finally took accountability, so that's amazing, right? Yeah, except at the end of his very next video, Nick can't help but insinuate one last time that he's the victim.
Play along tonight. I'm sure it's gonna be fun, as long as a bunch of freaks just relax.
Bet you thought I'd miss that, huh, Nick? Well, I cannot speak to his intentions. Seeing how Nick's tone goes from gloating to defensive to sincere in direct correlation to his subscriber count, I feel pretty comfortable calling him insincere. Oh, and in his apology, Nick still can't help but sprinkle the lies we've come to expect. For example, Nick says that after his initial coverage, he remained silent.
This video being made is not an effort to refuel the fire. Originally, I just wanted to do the best to respect the wishes of the victim in this situation and be quiet about it.
Because his repeated gloating was only on his Instagram stories, which leave no record after 24 hours. So Nick wasn't being silent, but the proof that he's lying can only be found in certain corners of Reddit, which makes it more obvious why Nick repeatedly demonizes Reddit to his audience.
There's too many Reddit debate bro dorks on this website trying to come after me every single day.
Now that's already pretty bad, but maybe it's still a reach to say that he's a phony who uses feminism. But it goes even further. Lex and others dragged Matt's current girlfriend into the situation despite her having nothing to do with it. Nick then went out of his way to showcase the girlfriend's Instagram to almost 1 million people.
Who Matt ended up dating, and if you go to her most recent post, you can see that comments on this post have been limited. The top comment saying magnum opus.
Mind you, Matt and this woman have never publicly disclosed their relationship, meaning Nick doxed her. And in his follow-up video, Nick pulled tweets from this girlfriend's private social media where she vents about the situation, specifically that her relationship was being dragged through the mud because of the lies these people spread. And Nick responds to these statements from, let's be clear, a victim of his sloppiness by saying he can use them to draw negative conclusions about Matt's opinions.
Dude, just know people are fucking lying about me like crazy, and the only reason I haven't said anything is because Matt and my friends told me not to, because Matt is going to take care of it and tell everyone the truth in his response, debunking everything. Overall, you can tell that she is not happy about it, and I can come to a conclusion about how Matt feels about it.
So wait, Nick will preach about how it's bad when women are seen as objects that are centered around men. But when a woman is dating someone Nick doesn't like, it's okay to dox them and imply they don't have their own agency. Interesting. And you want to know what I think really encapsulates Nick's relationship with feminism? I saw a Reddit comment that described Nick as the kind of guy that would talk down to women about feminism. And I found it funny, but of course I'm not going to include that unless I could somehow back it up, right? And Nick went on to do exactly that, saying he knew better than victims of assault and abuse.
I have seen creators who have firsthand experienced the backlash of telling a story as a victim online who are now backing up SuperMega as if they both didn't fully admit to to covering up their friend and employee actually assaulting another one of their friends.
So Nick is trying to advocate for victims of SA and domestic violence, who are primarily women. Actual victims come forth and say they disagree with him, so Nick's conclusion is that he knows better than they do. Do you get why I think he uses feminism for his own gain? And to beat the inevitable straw man, I fully support feminism, but I can't stand performative allies that make these causes about themselves. And somehow this gets even worse. See, a lot of Nick's content is him just making fun of people he finds cringy. And while this isn't new, people like Cody Ko or Eddie Burback would reserve such formats for when they were punching up at horrible people, and it would be pretty good-natured overall.
No, that's a fact.
You see how he's like, even he is like riding it a little bit?
Yeah, no, he's
like,
got
he's
flow.
putting a little something into it.
Yeah.
I don't think Jake Paul understands that him and all his, they sound like Kids Bop.
Yeah.
My teachers never told me that!
Yeah.
On the other hand, Nick will do this for anyone who goes viral on TikTok, despite most of them being non-public figures. Because as we've seen, Nick loves punching down. And he even has a third channel where he does the same thing, but is more mean about it. Oh, because you see, he's wearing a pair of funny sunglasses, which means he's doing a character, which means it's okay. So as of now, Nick is acting as the successor to both Keemstar and Colleen Ballinger. What great company to find yourself in. But the first example that also demonstrates his feminism is performative is a video he made in response to the viral Love Surge TikTok. And since his video's posting, a growing minority has criticized Nick for essentially bullying a woman at her low point, and Nick has since quietly taken this video down. Though what exactly is a love surge? Basically a couple posting their cringy lovey inside joke and going unexpectedly viral. Now this couple aren't really influencers. Most of their engagement seems to be people making fun of this video. In other words, they are much smaller than Nick. But Nick just piles on and makes fun of them because that was the trendy thing to do.
This is called a love surge, and we do this when one of us has like so much love in our limbs that we can't contain it.
Now, maybe I'm being a little too sensitive. I really don't like making fun of people, which is why despite all of my criticisms of Nick, I haven't made fun of him. Like, I remember Mean Girls being a cautionary tale, not a step-by-step guide, but whatever. At one point, Nick points out that the couple is being bullied, but says it's fine. And what makes it even funnier is the fact that Nick's girlfriend immediately disagrees with him.
What happens after this video is a lot of bullying. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of bullying. It seems like everyone is like just making jokes about it, which is like whatever, in good faith, right?
Yeah, no, this is like insane. I can't believe that they posted this on the internet, and I feel really bad for them. I think at the end of the day, you should just be able to do what you want, right? Like if you're a little weird, that's fine. I think if you post on the internet, like you gotta expect people are gonna meme on you, but I don't think anyone should like degrade them or something. I don't know, like harass them or something.
It's funny.
Yeah, he just totally ignores what she's saying and says the exact opposite as if he's agreeing with her. And here's the thing, I'm not dismissing good-natured jokes about how it's cringy. Even the woman in the video acknowledges that it's cringy and says she enjoys the good-natured jokes. But the situation quickly escalated to just crossing the line. Like, think back to Jake Novak, who had people filming him at his job because he went viral for being cringy. Now think back to how much Nick talks about the internet being a cruel place, especially for women. So he's gonna try to be part of the solution, right?
It doesn't end well. She seems really like, I can't believe the top comment. I like read the top comment.
Oh, she's crying because the internet's being cruel and Nick's just in the corner laughing. But okay, that's nothing. It's probably as bad as it gets, right? Nope, because she posted a video where she breaks down crying in response to people hoping she'd experience violence and SA. So she's being threatened, as Nick himself later acknowledges.
If you get big enough, you are going to be able to find the worst people on the internet, threatening you, hoping and wishing the worst things on you.
So she's clearly at her lowest, talking about a topic Nick is super passionate about when it comes to his friends, yet there he is in the corner, just making fun of her and cackling the whole time.
And you're like wishing that like someone cheated on each other, or wishing that like DV on me, or SA. I'm not talking about the hilarious stitches or anything. I'm talking about like the really mean, hurtful comments. And yeah, so I think a lot of times people type something online and then they don't see the result of it. This is the result. And if you like doing this to people and keep doing it.
Oh, don't tell him that. Don't tell him that's how they do it.
Almost like he loves punching down, which he even goes on to indirectly acknowledge that that's what he's doing.
Still feel bad for her. I think this is just a case of a normal everyday person getting a little too much attention on the internet, and it results in some pretty overwhelming things.
And what makes this even more hypocritical is that when a creator simulated essay in reference to one of Nick's friends, Nick took to YouTube and told his audience to mass report the creator in the hopes of deplatforming them.
Now, I don't think I have to explain why this is disgusting. Sneeko is harassing a female content creator, telling her that the reason why she's so upset is because she hasn't had sex in a while, and then he proceeds to aggressively simulate a sexual assault on Chad in his live stream in front of thousands of people. If you watch this video and you also believe that Sneeko should be banned from YouTube, you can go to his channel pages, click about, and then click the flag icon on the right side of the page and report the user.
Now, Sneeko, but it's crazy for Nick to have that attitude when talking about his friend, only to turn around and belittle someone for showing the effect this kind of language has on women. Oh, but don't worry, Nick gives a half-assed comment about how those jokes are bad before continuing to laugh at her for being upset by them.
Some people have more crass senses of humor, but I would think that most people would stay more away from that. Obviously, don't make that joke.
And even more, Nick says she should have apologized better instead of taking a stand and saying she had nothing to apologize for and was in fact a victim.
And everyone in the world is calling you and your husband cringe. I do think because she egged people on about it and decided to keep it all up and whatever, the video of her apologizing about it, looking back, comes off a little bit like blame me in certain ways on the overall audience of people, and boiling down a very small group of bad people and then posting a video of you crying and being like, oh look, this is what you asked for, are you happy? Are you happy that you got me to cry, this and that? It's just, I couldn't see myself posting a video of me doing that without hoping that people would kind of feel bad for me and then comfort me, which is like what she got, so I hope she's happy.
So yeah, Nick won't apologize for lying to millions of people, but he expects an apology for someone making him cringe. Like, Nick's lack of self-awareness in this video is incredible, especially since he went on to brag about being some expert on the human condition.
I literally feel like we're experts on like human behavior on people online, because you immediately know what niche they fit into. Like, I feel like I can almost see it in certain people, like just in their mannerisms, and maybe I'm like a freak and I keep thinking that I like can, you know, perceive people or whatever. At least there's this feeling of like, okay, I think I get the vibe. And this is my assessment of two people that I don't know. Again, not an expert. I like to think I am, but I'm totally not.
And Nick's viewers on Reddit have been talking about his content shifting to be more mean-spirited in feedback that feels pretty sincere. So maybe Nick will take this under consideration. Only he made an Instagram story about how feedback on Reddit doesn't count because Destiny criticized him at one point. Really says a lot that he's so quick to dismiss his fans, especially since he said that he doesn't use his comments to gauge feedback.
Listen, I have no gauge of how you feel about me. I know the comments aren't a very realistic depiction of my actual audience in the way that the greater viewer base on YouTube feels about me.
It's also really funny how Nick doesn't realize he has the exact same mindset of the Christians he criticizes, where he assumes that because he has righteous intent, he knows better than anyone who disagrees and can do no wrong. But I implied that Nick was an honorary mean girl, and yet he kind of is, because even when he's talking about serious situations like Gus or SuperMega, he can't help but throw insults even when it's clearly inappropriate, going after things like their views or worth.
Can I put a photo of him up on the screen? It's literally what he looks like.
For seemingly no other reason than to save his sad career.
But of course, if his art sucks, let's dunk on him. He sucks.
This is a business transaction between two sad people who know they can benefit off of each other.
SuperMega has actually fallen below 1 million subscribers on YouTube. They were just hovering above 1 million for a very long time because they weren't gaining many fans. They don't have it anymore. Matt has used this phrase when talking about his channel, despite the fact that really not something to be that proud of. I know it's easy to just throw up when your channel's not doing great and you only really want to post American Truck Simulator Let's Plays, but I have a real job with a real schedule that I keep up for my audience. And my favorite post right here says, apologist gets what he deserves. And it shows Matt getting the absolute beaten out of him. Let's just let it play a couple more times. We can keep watching it. I don't think anyone minds letting this loop on repeat. We could just let this go. If you want me to do this for the rest of the video, I could.
Hell, even in his so-called apology, he couldn't stop himself from getting in one last dig.
You'll see that I don't need or want clout or attention from them. My TikTok drama audience does not overlap with a dying Let's Play channel.
Oh, but I'm sorry, unbiased reporter over here. And he has an open group chat on Instagram where he just trash talks people, including making fun of someone singing. And just in general, his content has gone from talking about real issues with some effort to just making fun of people for not fitting Nick's idea of cool. But on top of everything I've discussed, this dude's ego is insane. While freak is Nick's favorite go-to insult, it's not his only one. You see, multiple times Nick has said get a real job as an insult while bragging that he has a real job.
I know it's easy to just throw up when your channel's not doing great and you only really want to post American Truck Simulator Let's Plays, but I have a real job with a real schedule that I keep up for my audience.
The arrogance required to talk like this when you're a fucking drama YouTuber is unbelievable. For starters, Nick has openly admitted that he generally spends less than a day on his YouTube videos. In fact, he presents this like a fun little quirk instead of something he should be desperately hiding, given the fact that all of his videos get hundreds of thousands of views from talking about real people.
You guys know that I make these videos like the same day. Like I wake up and then I make the video and put it out right away. And the reason I have to make my videos all in a single day is because if I don't, it begins to get stretched out very long. And that's why it never really feels like I have videos that take any longer than like a day where I just yap. Because it's really hard for me to like put all that time in and it starts to feel like a way bigger project. It's been really fun to see people enjoying me talking about stuff, and like I'm doing all the videos like the same day. Like today is Wednesday.
And because of this carelessness, Nick has been criticized by his viewers on multiple occasions for getting his facts wrong. And like, I'm a creator on YouTube in a similar niche to Nick. I can tell you straight up that Nick makes 6 figures comfortably. Before the SuperMega stuff, Nick's channel was getting a lot of views, roughly 2 million a week. For that, you're looking at a minimum of 6K a week from AdSense, almost 1,000 a day for making fun of TikToks. And that's not counting sponsorships, which can easily triple that number, if not more. Now, is YouTube a real job? Well, I'm gonna hurt my relatability a little bit and say, yeah, of course it is. I know firsthand the late nights, the sacrifices, and the effect it can have on your physical and mental health. At least when you care about this job, but whatever. But we are the absolute last people who get to put down anyone for not having a real job, especially other creators. Like, we have an unimaginable amount of privilege doing this job. We are grossly overpaid. We have no bosses telling us what to do. We get to schedule every second of our lives freely and get to work exclusively on whatever we chose to. Nick is only 24 and he's been doing YouTube for years. So Nick most likely has very little, if any, other work experience. In fact, YouTube is the only job listed on his LinkedIn. Also, in a video specifically about his previous work, these are the only jobs he mentioned.
So my first job was at a place when I was 16 years old called
Redacted
Water Park. And I was the guy that stands at the top of the slides who tells you when to go down. My brother's friend's aunt and uncle owned a couple restaurants and they were opening up this new one. And it's like a Greek place, but Chipotle.
So Nick, your third job was at a Domino's?
Yeah, Domino's Pizza. This is something that even when I was a kid was something I worried about all the time, about being in the real world and having to have a 9-to-5, having to show up to a job where you are not the boss of your work. I am in a privileged position where I cannot say that I've had to go through that same experience. I hated that. Being a YouTuber is so much better. Should have just been a YouTuber. All those people that work there should be YouTubers. You guys should be YouTubers.
Yeah, Nick, that's what research looks like. Yet Nick has the gall to talk down to people as if he's better or more experienced than them. Off. And you want to hear something hilarious? I can't say if it was a response to people specifically calling out Nick for this, but Nick recently made a whole video where he calls out influencers for talking down to people who work a traditional 9-to-5, where he's acting like an absolute champion of the working class while saying the people who engage in the same language as him need to grow up. It honestly feels like hilarious damage control.
As someone who does social media full time and puts a lot of time into it, I can confidently say it is not nearly as hard as any other 9-to-5. You do not have a real job. You do not. And don't take this as me saying that influencers need to get a real job or go. I think if you're making a ton of money, that's good for you. Keep making a ton of money. Do whatever you want. Don't just talk down to other people, though, who do have to do that and who are not happy about it.
Can't make this up. Now, okay. Do I think that Nick is a bad person? I don't mean to be underwhelming, but no, I don't particularly think that. But I do think he's incredibly naive and arrogant. He seems to hold a very myopic view of the world where you're either fully with him or else you're an evil freak. And yeah, that on its own is kind of whatever, and it's pretty understandable when you're in your early 20s. But when you have the platform and impact that Nick does, naivety and arrogance become dangerous. Nick has the power to ruin people's lives, but is too defensive to even consider that he's capable of misusing this power. Nick screeches about wanting accountability, but always finds an excuse for the behavior of either himself or his friends, and he refuses to acknowledge wrongdoings without either straight up lying about them or dismissing and misrepresenting his critics. Like, Nick fully admits to not spending more than a day on his videos. And look, I've done same day uploads and drama videos, right? They do often make much more money and get way more views than my video essays or commentary, but I always give myself enough time to be confident that I know what I'm talking about, even if it means less views. So when I do same day uploads, it's only because I already consider myself very knowledgeable on the topic, either because I've covered it before or was already working on the video and got lucky with timing. Yet that's Nick's default setting. And I know it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn here, but I'm not trying to, because what I'm describing is kind of the bare minimum in this genre. In my experience, there are people who do good because they want to do the right thing, and then there are people who do good because they want to be seen doing the right thing. And in a lot of cases, this involves putting other people down to make yourself look better by comparison. And given everything about the way Nick conducts himself, I can't help but be reminded of that toxic mindset. And look, I know this seems like a weird video to put so much effort into, but I've been wanting to talk about this for a really long time, even if I don't have much to gain by talking about a dying drama channel. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Bye!